Hi, my name is Matt Bernhardt, and I'd like to welcome you to a Massive Report Screencast.
As the new season gets closer and closer with the combine and draft coming up very soon, I've been going back through the data set that I've been maintaining for league history and specifically for 2012, and I've been noticing a couple things some trends that I think some people have commented on, but I've been noticing myself a little bit more deeply. To start with, I'm going to start with a graph here that is my league chase illustration that comes off of Massive Report data, which there's a link here in the annotations and in the comments if you want to play around with this yourself. But what you're seeing here is every match day where each team was in terms of the standings for that day. So you see the teams all laid out here. You see how well each team was doing in terms of a points chase. So, obviously there's Toronto way down at the bottom because they were almost always in last place. But then you've got, San Jose, who was never, a clear leader other than maybe a couple match days, but they were always in first place. So, as I look at this, there's obviously Toronto sticks out, and there's this group of teams that, starting from about match day 28 in mid-August, were pretty clear that they were not going to be making the playoffs, and then there was this pack of teams that was still chasing right up and almost until the very end. So if we turn off these filters, first of all, let's take out the Western Conference teams. So we take out Vancouver, San Jose, Seattle, Salt Lake, Portland, Los Angeles, Dallas, Chivas, and Colorado. That should leave 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, that sounds about right. So now here in the Eastern Conference, that pattern starts to become a little bit clearer because this was the team that was right after Columbus and Montreal, and although they made a run here that got within a couple points there in mid-August, then they hit a flat spot and kind of ran out of gas. And actually, it's possible to filter this not by match day, but by day of the year as well. But for this case, each column is a match day, not necessarily a week of the calendar. So, obviously the Crew ended up missing out, losing out to Houston by 1 point in the final standings, whereas Kansas City was up at the top, and were pretty much always at the top after a very, very strong start, and then they kind of fell back to earth a little bit. So if we filter out a little bit more of the teams, Montreal, New England, and Philly, now you've got that group of teams that Columbus was kind of always towards the tail end of, lost track of a little bit, and then clawed their way back in early fall, and then kind of fell back down and ultimately missed the playoffs. So that's, it just kind of tells a story that we're all familiar with. But the thing that I was noticing earlier was, if we look at Columbus and then, we see their individual results. We see a kind of a slow patch at the beginning. We see a couple games where they went winless, and then they weren't, on a strong win. This is the kind of, debut of Arrieta and Higuain, followed by, again, a kind of fall back to earth. But the thing that was surprising to me anyway, maybe everybody else has already seen it, but when I look at LA, who ended up winning MLS Cup, their pattern was very, very similar. They were always tracking to within a couple points, other than this bit, which, if we look at LA in a little bit more detail, this was the period where LA was really in the doldrums and the pressure was starting to mount on Bruce Arena before they started reeling off wins again. And obviously everybody knows LA went on to win MLS Cup, got into a fourth seed, got hot, or a fourth or a fifth seed, I can't remember, but they got into the playoffs, got hot, and ended up winning the whole thing. So, it's kind of similar to what Colorado Rapids were in 1997, where they got hot at the right time. But it was just interesting to me to look back and see that while the Crew's 2012 season was certainly a disappointment, it was, not all that different in terms of results from a team like Los Angeles. So, and I think that one of the things that was interesting about this specifically is if I go up and, or I guess one other, maybe not specifically, but one other thing that I thought was interesting was if I look at the comparisons to history, and how the team did in in 2012 versus previous seasons. You have their 2012 results here, and obviously they fell well short of the team in 2008. But if we look at the other teams from Robert Warzy's tenure, they, were kind of. There were moments where this was the worst team that he's coached. There were moments where they started to look, a little bit better. They started off a little bit stronger. But one thing that I was a little bit nervous about that I didn't see that season was, if I look at 2009, the team started very slowly, and you can kind of write that off a little bit to, this is the first year with Robert in charge, and a little bit of, we're the best team in MLS, we're just going to win these games because we show up. So once they got through that readjustment period, starting, about early mid-May, they really started to do pretty well. And then in 2010, there's this flat spot that exemplifies a pattern that I've been troubled by with his teams, which is this kind of a tendency to peak at the wrong moments and to fall flat on the build-up to a playoffs, which then sets the stage for an early playoff exit if you run into one of these teams that's hot, like we did in 2010 when we were ousted by Real Salt Lake. Similar pattern in 2011. Where the team went winless for a number of games, finally ended up winning their last two, made it into the playoffs, and then lost on the road in Colorado, who then went on to make MLS Cup that season. But in this season there was a little bit of a dull spot in summer, late spring going into summer. But then this is the part where the team was challenging relatively well. When we're poised to, start to make a run on the top part of the table, when we suffered this massive 6-2 loss out in Seattle, which really, really hurt the kind of team's psyche. And then we started getting into the stretch run of the Champions League, and that just combined to sink the season. So the pattern that we saw in 2010 and 2011, where there was this late game, slide, this long winless streak, didn't really show up this time. We managed to, the team wasn't rattling off wins like they were right after the debut of Higuain and when he started to combine really well with Arrieta, nor, did it go as well as it did in, late spring, early summer. But the team didn't go through, I guess you could say that they had one win or two wins out of their last umpteen games, but there isn't that remarkable flat spot as there was in 2011 and 2010. So anyway, there'll be links in the comments to see these charts for yourself if you want to take a look at them. This is all coming off the data repository that I maintain at massivereportdata.com. I'd love to hear what you think. So yeah, share it in the comments. Bye.